what would you say is like as an athlete, like your superpower? And what I mean by that is like, what is the thing like for you as a rower at, the highest level, two-time Olympian, going for, kind of starting the process to make a third? What do you feel like is the thing that your core as an athlete has kind of helped guide that trajectory or that skill set that you rely on? And it could be as simple as, hey, you know what, I'm just I'm just ultra competitive and I, win every seat race and this and that. And that's why I'm in these boats. Or it could be, I take care of my body, recovery, I get enough sleep, I do this or that. Like there's that one thing that you own that you feel like when you're talking about separating the top of the top, you feel like that is something that you've really taken ownership of and has been a key driver in your success today?
I think my personal rowing superpower is my grit and my toughness. It's funny because I actually wouldn't have necessarily said that that was what I was best at until I've started watching other people compete. I, when I went to Tokyo, I thought, oh my God, this is my first national team. I thought I was going to be so nervous. I thought I was going to go to the line and be like, I'm going to throw up. I'm so nervous. I'm competing at the Olympics. I actually wasn't that nervous. This is not to say I wasn't nervous at all, because I definitely was nervous. But I think my ability to compete under pressure is one of my most important aspects. Even just racing the single at speed order, I realized like during those races, I was like, okay, I might not actually even win all these races, but like no one is going to break me. I will never break during a race. And I think that that is like a super key aspect to have. And definitely was like highlighted in my best race performances have just been like, you are going to out tough other people. And like you can do that. You can make yourself like work harder during races and then also during practices. Like we do a lot of side by side and look, we're supposed to do heart rate training. Sometimes you let the heart rate go out the door because you gotta win. And I think that like toughness and grit and need to prove yourself all the time is like an incredibly valuable skill. I think it actually also probably comes from coming from Colombia. One of my coaches, Sam, once told me, like when I told her I wanted to try to make the national team, she was like, they're never going to make it easy. You are going to have to prove and overprove that you can do it. Like you're going to have a chip on your shoulder and that is fine. Keep that chip on your shoulder. It will make you better.
That's all. And do you? Here's a follow up question I was going to ask you anyway, but it kind of speaks to some of what you talked about. But do you feel like that had influence, like you were stroke seat this past
Mm-hmm.
Olympic cycle, and rowing is a sport where like in an eight, like there's one seat that kind of stands out above. And again, it's not in terms of like, hey, like this is the best, the star of the team kind of thing, but there's something different that kind of puts you in that seat relative to, or your skill set's a little bit different than
Mm-hmm.
maybe, the people sitting in the middle or the person in the bow. Like, do you feel like, again, this is an opportunity for, for you and however way you kind of want to go about it, but like, do you feel like part of that being in that position and being the stroke seat of literally, the elite of the elite boat, do you think that's contributed to that grittiness and that competitiveness? And or do you think it's more like, what do you feel like was one of the, when you think about seats that people highlight, right, the stroke seat is obviously one that sets the rhythm, right, the flow and everything that goes through, is determined by the person setting the pace. What do you feel like, again, a little bit broader, but what do you feel like kind of led to, or has kind of put you in that position, right? Is it rowing the single all the time and your technique? Like,
Mm-hmm.
again, because it is a unique opportunity. And while we have you, I think it's good for young listeners who are, oh, I'm stroke seat again. This is cool. Like,
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's because I do this or that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, shed some light on that. Again, your personal kind of thing, but any kind of takeaways that you have for being in that position.
Mm-hmm. I think you would obviously have to ask Jesse the ultimate question of like why he picked me. But I think part of it is like I've spent a lot of time in stroke seats earlier in my career, and I think when I was younger, it was probably because a lot of times in like a smaller boat, you can put a stronger person there who is technically a little less good, and then they can kind of just go, and the bow seat can follow them. But I think as I went on, it was because I was consistent. And I think that's like one of the biggest skills you can work on if you're a stroke seat in a boat is like people are relying on you. You cannot go rogue ever. And I think that like Jesse would say that he would trust me to do exactly what he is telling us to do and be able to do it again and again and again and again. I think that that is sort of like a key skill is like, yeah, you're not better than the other people in your boat. You're not really different, but you need to be so consistent and unflappable. And I think that is like a super important thing about that seat is like, you need to have a clear like identity of what your stroke is. That doesn't mean you're never going to compromise. Like you have to compromise in practice with your boat and like talk about what works and you need to change to fit what works for them. But then in a race, you are going to do what you're going to do and everyone else is going to follow you and you have to like have sort of, I think also, yeah, that belief in yourself that what you're doing is correct. And I think that is really important for racing because you can't like let self-doubt ever creep in.